A beautiful afternoon, and thanks for joining us on our program Africa Discourse on Independent Television. My name is Evan Sunukogie. Today we are going to be following from where we stopped last week, talking about the ongoing conflicts in the DRC. That's Democratic Republic of Congo, the eastern part of it, whereby conflict has been going on. And of course, it's been an issue that is taking other parts of the world. Talking about concerns, people and organizations. As we speak now, a few days ago, there was a kind of a coming together of some leaders from the eastern countries in Africa to see how they can put a final stop to the ongoing conflicts in Democratic Republic of Congo. And of course, one thing that came out from that, coming together is the fact that the two leaders of the two nations that are involved now, talking about Sudan and of course the DRC, were not, they didn't come together. As a matter of fact, we understand that the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, was there, but the president of the DRC wasn't there, but he joined that meetings virtually, and of course that is also beginning to elicit some reactions, because some people are of the view that if these two nations at war, I mean, the two leaders ought to come together. I mean, they should look at each other eyeballs to eyeballs and see how they can find a lasting solution to the ongoing conflict. But a situation whereby one seems to be dodging some resolution, attempts to put the issues together is not, is totally uncalled for. All right, so today on the program Africa Discourse, we're going to be looking at the updates, talking about recent moves on how the ongoing crisis in the DRC can be put to a rest. And of course, to do all this with us this afternoon, we are so privileged to have a professor and also a lecturer from the University of Benin, Professor Ayinde Boniyami Adeshina. So welcome to the program Africa Discourse.
Good afternoon, our viewers at home and throughout the world.
Okay. All right, so sir, it was in Dar es Salaam a few days ago, on Saturday to precise, that we saw that nations came together to see how they can put a lasting solution to the ongoing crisis. And it is, for them, it's rather be a kind of a peaceful resolution through dialogue and all that. But from the way the crisis has gone so far, and also bearing in mind that it looks as if that the two nations that are involved, that they are not too, they seem not to be too interested in bringing the crisis to a stop. So where do we go from here? Can the ongoing present position, the ongoing issues meant to put the crisis together, will it finally bring a stop to the crisis?
Well, it's unfortunate that we have brothers in the two countries fighting one another over what ought to have been resolved amicably. The amicability of resolving the issue was made difficult by involvement of external people, particularly the America, the Chinese, as well as other countries that have economic interest in DRC. If you look at the whole issue deeply, you observe that the major cause of the whole thing is this intertribal war between the Hutus and the Tutsis. As at that time when the crisis started in Rwanda, some of the Tutsis were killed and some were pushed to the Hutus, ran to part of what we have as the modern day DRC.
Yeah.
Now, by the time this man came into power, he felt that, well, these are the people, and he tried to find a way to look at the situation that was happening in Zaire then. That is when Mobutu Sese Seko was there. That more or less made him, if he was, as has been accused in recent time, that he supported some rebels against Mobutu then. And eventually, when they galvanized all these rebellion groups from Uganda side, from Burundi side, they eventually succeeded in sending Mobutu into exile. Now, Kabila came in, Laurent Kabila came in. They supported him to be there. But at a point, he also felt that it should be made to be independent. and he started waging war against them, and eventually now started empowering the Hutus to fight back. So by way of resisting him, Kagame went ahead to support the group they call the M23 movement, because they were established, the movement was established on March 23.
In Rwanda.
In Rwanda.
Yeah.
So they eventually moved to the eastern part of DRC, where they started fighting the Hutus. To a large extent, they succeeded in killing, in overthrowing or in killing the president of DRC, which of course brought in the Kabila Jr. And gradually they started developing, and up to the second, the next president. This problem had been there, but what made it to be much escalated is the identification or the presence of these scarce elements, scarce materials that are used in the production of green energy, electronics, that were identified, discovered by the Europeans as well as the Americans. So this more or less have led to the escalation of the whole thing, because these people came in group, much as they have their business interest. They started finding a way of either supporting this one, opposing this one. And what they are just interested is what they have there as their own personal interest. And when you have that kind of situation, that there is no way you have absolute peace. It's just like this, the parable of do I say Arena, who saw two cats fighting over a meal and decided to share it for them. He will take part of the meal, put it in his mouth,
and take the other part,
give this one. This one will complain that this one is bigger than my own now. Collect this one, collect part of this one, and eat it. So when he eats that one too, this one will complain that this one is now having bigger one, and eventually they didn't have anything. The whole thing went to the hyena. So which more or less that means that the way they are fighting, both Rwanda and DRC will not have much of the utilization of these resources. Everything will be taken by these people who are more or less foiling the crisis between them.
All right, so let's look at, because the DRC, it is not entirely the whole nation that is at conflict now. We are making restrictions to the eastern part, and that seems to be where the mineral resources, the solid minerals we are talking about, that seems to be where it is largely deposited. But let us look at the body language of the two leaders now, talking about the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, and of course the DRC president, Felix Tshisekedi. That I don't know whether he deliberately avoided the last meeting in Dar es Salaam, but he joined the meeting remotely anyway. You know, persons are looking at it that, look, these two guys seems not to be ready to actually put a stop to this conflict. How would you react to that?
Well, really, if there is physical presence of the two of them, one would have said that there is substantial effort that will have been made in order to actually look at the nitty-gritty of what the problems are. But just looking at the fact that one of them decided not to be there, it still shows that the level of anger is still high. And maybe he feels so pained, he feels so cheated or maltreated by the other person. So I feel that the African leaders in that area can actually go beyond the issue of the one of them not present there, finding a way to make sure that they talk to the two of them to look beyond personal interest, but the suffering of those that are tangentially involved, those are those that are experiencing collateral losses over the issue, both from the side of DRC, particularly from the side of DRC, because the problem seems to be more on the soils of DRC.
In the eastern part more.
In the eastern part.
Yeah.
So if you look at the population of the people that are involved, that are affected, it's so alarming. It's so alarming. In fact, there were reports that some soldiers, M23 soldiers, as well as Red Cross personnel, they were burying so many people.
Allegations now.
Allegations.
Yeah, allegations
but
now.
whether they are allegations or they are not allegations, these are realities. Wherever you have conflict of this magnitude, lives will be lost, and then properties will not be spared. And coupled with the fact that we are talking of what ought to make nations great, I mean these solid minerals. So, and that is where the complicity of the foreigners come in. You cannot rule it out that these persons may actually be fueling this crisis.
Now, talking about this foreign interest now, because it is this same foreign interest that will always bring the issue of the way the crisis has taken a dimension, you know, looking at it from a humanitarian point of view now. People will say that it is no more just a crisis, it is more less like a humanitarian crisis now. Now, this foreign interest, are they concerned about the humanitarian crisis nature that this conflict, you know, has taken, you know, tune? Are they interested at all?
Well, if they are interested at all, it will be superficial. They will only pay lip services to that, because we've seen examples of that in other countries or in other areas in the world. What they are interested more is whatever comes to them, what their interests, what their goals are, what are their aspirations are. As long as they achieve that, the number of persons that are involved in the destruction become immaterial to them, as long as they are able to satisfy their own interest. And that is why we Africans have to look inward and start looking at the human value, the humanity in every one of us, to see that whatever we have should be used to benefit Africa and Africans. It is when we start looking at this dimension that we jettison whichever influence comes from these people. Because as it is, the rate of destruction that we have in the soils of Africa, it's unimaginable. And one can say that this is the only continent where you have that magnitude of destruction going on. If you look at what is happening in other parts of the world, that of Africa is unimaginable.
All right, so the program one more time is Africa Discourse on independent television, and today we are exploring recent moves to end the crisis in the DRC. Now, the crisis we are talking about now has been for an offshoot of about 30 years, and little wonder whether this recent moves is going to bring to a stop of the crisis, of the conflict that has been on for more than 30 years. We'll take a short pause then, and when we return, we will begin from other parts of the issues that we're looking at this afternoon. Stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program still here, Africa Discourse on independent television, and we are still talking about the ongoing crisis in DRC, whereby recently we saw an African summit, some Eastern countries in Africa, and of course some countries in South Africa gathering in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania to direct that there should be a ceasefire, and you know, that it should be a kind of a resolution, you know, there should be a talks on how to fix the issues in the ROC. So we're looking at all that this afternoon, and of course also trying to examine whether this latest directive can actually put to an end a crisis that has been on for more than 30 years. All right, so Professor, just as what we're trying to say, because since around 1994, if I get my record correctly now, that the DRC crisis started more than 30 years, only very recently that we are seeing African leaders, you know, from blocks now coming together to put a directive. Now, do we think that this recent directive now can actually put a stop, or is just a lip service directive?
Well, the directive, any directive that is given,
because it's not the first time.
It's not the first time. It's not the second time, not the third time, and I believe it will not be the last one. Because any directive that is not given the required bite, that's supposed to required support. They're supposed to follow it. It just will just be made ordinary. Will be regarded as being made as a form of spur of the moment, not something that they feel they should be able to back up with certain actions, concrete actions. Because at such summit, it was expected that certain statements ought to be made that will show the readiness of the bloc to really enforce what they wanted to do, to be done. Because whether we like it or not, just as we mentioned earlier on, the bulk of the people that are affected by these wars, by this war, are more or less innocent ones that you have as women, you have as children, even teenagers, and those that don't even know anything about it at all. That if you ask majority of these people what exactly are the causes of this conflict, they will tell you they know nothing. So if there is a consideration given to the suffering of these people, automatically the common sense will tell anyone that the best thing is just to back down on anything that they want to do in terms of escalating the conflict. But as it is, as long as there are no forces on ground, for instance, assuming we have African Union forces that will make sure that they find a way to separate them to de-escalate the conflict, automatically we can be talking of that. Just like you have the United Nations forces that can be sent, that are usually sent to such environments in order to make sure that they maintain peace from the two sides. Such may eventually put a solution to that, so that the political moves to solve the problem can start going underground. But as it is, I doubt if there will be any solution to it, other than, and military solution cannot solve the problem.
Okay, let us also try to look at some suggestions that some interest groups are making now. Somebody said that since we have a situation whereby blocks are coming into it now, take for example, we have the Southern African Development Community, that's the SAEAC coming, then also the East African Community, that's the EAC bloc coming together to further give a directive that there should be a ceasefire. Somebody is trying to suggest that, hey, why don't these blocs, roll out more sanctions? These are the issues. Unfortunately, some of these blocs have also been accused of being part of the problem. Okay. Like Uganda. Yeah. Burundi. Some of them have been, at one time or another, they have been accused of either supporting Kagame or supporting DRC. DRC. So if you have people who are tangentially involved in the crisis coming back to solve the problem, they can be accused directly or indirectly, and that will more or less bring no solution to anyone. Now, you may not even blame, because what we are looking at is we are looking at a crisis that seems to be cutting across geopolitical, cutting across geographical locations now. I mean, something that is affecting parts of Rwanda, obviously, is going to also affect parts of Sudan. Something that is also affecting parts of DRC is also going to affect other nearby countries. So I think that's probably the reason why neighboring countries seems to be supporting their next door neighbor, supporting DRC or supporting the other country, as the case may be. Well, that may be true. Also looking at it from the tribal distribution of some of these countries, which is also next to geopolitical arrangements. Yeah. So this may not be too far from the truth, because it's just like you look at certain parts of this nation as we are. You have certain tribes that are at the edge of the map, so to speak, who have the extension, who have the extension of such tribes across to the other country. Just like having problems in such an area, such persons will see, such tribes will see it as an obligation, or may see it as an obligation to support. Yeah. So more or less escalating the whole thing beyond what is expected. And then looking at it again, as I do believe that after every war, people come back to the round table. So the question is, before we go to war, where do we put the round table? But perhaps we've not seen a crisis, on the soil of the African continent that has lasted for up to this time? I mean, we're looking at the crisis of about 30 years.
Well, I will still put the blame back to the foreigners that are involved in this crisis. Because in almost all parts of the Africa that we have read, wherever you see crisis going on, there must be involvement of foreign interest. Yeah. Foreign interest must be involved. And unless we find a way to curb the incursion of this foreign interest, automatically there will be continuation of this kind of crisis. Because they have what they are benefiting from here, I mean, from such crisis. It's just like what you have in Niger. Until recently, when the Nigerians decided they did not want them again, you have that in Burkina Faso, you have that in Mali. They decided to form their bloc. So if there is that consensus that this is what we want to do for our people, automatically the incursion of the external people will be limited. Even if they would involve their expertise, it will be well defined. This is what we want you to do for us, not that they will get there and start calling the shot. Because what is happening in DRC today, you have the Chinese fully involved, more or less palling with the government of the day. You have the Americans more or less also having their interest. You have the various European countries. And apart from the fact that you have these countries having their own mining spaces, locations in the country. Yeah. You have other countries that surround them that are also having interest in some of these mining locations, who more or less finance some of these rebel groups to make sure that they sustain their hegemony or their grip on the soil of another country. So there is no way there will be lasting solution, particularly when you already finger a country like Rwanda being involved, fully involved in the destabilization of DRC. So it's something that we just have to really put on our thinking caps, and those that are involved in the solution should be more pungent.
A while ago, you were almost going to establish, the fact or think along the line that perhaps more sanctions should be rolled out from blocks surrounding these two nations, to bring this crisis to a stop. Would that be correct?
That would be nice. That would be nice. It also depend on the integrity of those that want to rule out the sanctions. So if you have people, if you have countries that they know they have influence on them in terms of, it could be economic influence, it could be military influence. At the end of the day, such country either imposing their own, either imposing the sanctions on them, which eventually will force them to back out as much as possible. Because the kind of things that we see on the screen every day is so alarming that you start thinking, are we still human beings that we claim to be?
How would you want to describe the character of Paul Kagame in this whole crisis? Because a lot of persons are not too comfortable with him. They describe his own position, as trying to interfere into another country's issues and all that. How would you describe it?
He is becoming, in recent time, more controversial, more unstable, because many people saw him in the past as someone that is, or that was ready to maintain peace, not only within his country, coming from the fact that he more or less was part and parcel of the problem that started, that happened in Rwanda, and coming to power, he tried to find a way to harmonize everybody, galvanize all the different groups, to make sure that they have one goal, to develop Rwanda. And whether we like it or not, he has achieved that to some extent. Maybe he may be suffering from the syndrome of staying too long in power, feeling that he knows it all. Because he has been there for more than 30 years now as the president of Rwanda. So he may have reached the zenith of his wit, more or less undergoing a point of decline.
Okay. All right, so we'll take a short pause again, and when we return, we are going to be looking at other ways and now that people are suggesting, ethocists are suggesting in this whole crisis in DRC to see how the conflicts can be brought to a stop. We'll take a short pause. We'll be right back. All right, thank you one more time. The program is still right here, Africa Discourse on Independent Television, and we are estraying the crisis, the ongoing crisis in the DRC. That's the Democratic Republic of Congo, and also looking at some recent updates on the crisis, on how best to bring the crisis to an end. Now we have seen some of the suggestions that world leaders are making, particularly the last summits, that was made in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, whereby the principle of peaceful resolution, ceasefire resolution, was really canvassed for. And we still have Professor Yinde here with us looking at the issue. Now, Prof, let us look at, because some persons have also, tried to look at the whole thing. Now, if we could have in Rwanda had its own fair share of this same crisis, also as a result of, natural resources and all that, the Hutsis and the Tutsis and all that. Now, Paul Kagame has been praised, even as it stands today, that he was able to imbibe the doctrine of nationality, the doctrine of love for nation. As a matter of fact, every Rwandan sees himself as a Rwandese, not from this part of Rwanda and all that. So what some leaders are also suggesting that perhaps Felix and Tshisekedi, the DRC president, should also try to develop this model so that an average Congolese can see his or herself that, look, I'm a Congolese, I'm not necessarily from this part or from the other part, so that we can have a situation whereby the crisis can be brought to stop. I don't know whether you think along this line.
Well, that could be possible. That could be possible, assuming you have the crisis to be more or less, or to a large extent, home-based crisis, because the way
no external
influence, because that of Rwanda, as you said, is home localized. It was between two major tribes in the country, not involving other people from other side. Even if other people will be involved from other side, they will be more or less belonging to one of the major tribes. But this time around, we have different tribes in DRC. It's only one major one amongst them that more or less is involved in this crisis. And those are the Hutus. And they are being sponsored from outside, more or less, by the group they call the M23. And we have read that the M23 was not formed on the soils of DRC.
It was formed in Rwanda.
It was formed in Rwanda. So more or less you have external aggression coming to, and there is no way you say you want to have a kind of agreement or settlement with such. The settlement may eventually come with some sacrifices that may eventually be dictated by the aggressor, so to speak.
Now, but what do you think have gone wrong with the M23? Because we remember when the M23, started, and of course they were given the mandate to bring a respite to DRC. I mean, they started well, but over time, what may have gone wrong with the M23?
Well, the part of the things that may have gone wrong with them is the fact that, one, if they did not see themselves as part of the leadership of DRC, that may be one of the reasons. Also, their interest in the natural resources.
The ulterior motive too.
The ulterior motive too. Particularly if their own leadership is also being controlled directly or remotely by the external forces, both within and from within and outside Africa. So automatically they will see themselves as real lords of the land.
So you want to say that Paul Kagame probably had, or he has an ulterior motive? Because when we say M23 now, obviously we're talking about a formation that was put together by Paul Kagame. So maybe ab initio Paul Kagame had an ulterior motive.
It may not be far from that. Because if with anyone that is rational, you have this kind of situation at hand and people are pointing accusing finger at you, you should be able to rein in those guys in order not to allow yourself to be blackmailed as he's been subjected to now, because it's a serious blackmail. How will you have a group that is not fomenting trouble in your own country
and yet in
another country, and you are sustaining that, and you expect the country to, I mean, the leadership of the country to just keep quiet? So automatically something is wrong somewhere.
All right, so you also talked, you said that until Africans, you know, are able to look inward, there's no way they can actually begin to bring peace to some of these conflict issues, you know, on the continent of Africa. Now, that has been one big problem that we'll be talking about. Now, even in nations whereby we've seen that the military have taken over, external, you know, interference has always been a problem. Now, how can we as Africans, our leadership, you know, our leaders in Africa, how can they begin to think, you know, in a certain way that external influence and interest and all that will not interfere in leadership in Africa?
Well, it's a very difficult decision, and unless the peoples of Africa, the peoples in different countries, make that solid decision that whatever problem we have, we can solve it by ourselves. China did that under Chairman Mao. It cost them a lot of things, but eventually China was able to wriggle out of it. And I believe from recent development they are showing us, if it is true, Burkina Faso is equally trying to get out of it. So it's something that people have to decide, because individuals make the nation. People come together to say that this is what we want, this is what we don't want.
Let us be careful with the way we talk about the Burkina Faso, because Burkina Faso may have been free from the French, you know, interference, not free from Vladimir Putin, mind you.
Well, you have maybe they consider two evils and look for the lesser one, the one that will have to them, that may have less effect on them as well as the populace. But the fact remains that if you look at what the France has done to majority of its colonies, they will never get out of it. If you study all the kind of instructions that were put there for them to become independent, there is no way no country will be able to get out of it.
Okay. All right, so the ceasefire resolution that was reached on Saturday in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania says that in another few days, that M23 is going to be, you know, should be thinking of leaving, you know, the eastern parts of the DRC. Let us restrict it to the eastern part of the DRC now, because it is not the whole entire nation that is at crisis here. Now, the question that we ask is, if M23 leaves, don't you think it's going to be a worse situation, you know, in the eastern part of the DRC?
I don't see it being a worse situation, except we want to say, there are other rebel groups that are within there. M23 may just be the major ones from what we have seen, because since external forces are involved, some of these external forces may eventually, it could be that they also have their own pockets of rebels that are protecting their mining sites for them. So if M23, that is seen as the global one, leaves, automatically these small ones may still be there. So the best thing is just to look for a holistic way to solve the entire problem. Of course, sending out or appealing to the bigger one to leave may eventually pave way to how they will start talking to the minor ones, so to speak.
How would you want to describe the body language of the United Nations? They keep a mission, they keep the peacekeeping mission force of the United Nations. How would you want to describe them?
Well, if they really want to show the strength they are made of, they should be able to establish their feet in different parts of the eastern part of DRC. Otherwise, it will just be like having dogs around that don't have teeth. And that would be as bad as not even having anyone at all.
Oh, you want to say that the United Nations has interest too? I mean, when we talk about the United Nations, obviously, we may be making allusion to the United States of America.
Well, unfortunately, unfortunately, because the U.S. had mining side, they had interest in their solid minerals before, some of which they eventually sold to the Chinese. So if they are coming back in the name of United Nations, we have to really doubt their sincerity.
Now, if we suggest that because some persons are saying that, okay, let the military come in. If Felix Nzeketsi, is not really demonstrating a thorough leadership, it seems not to be in control of the leadership in DRC, then of course let the military come in. I mean, trying to look at it in the eye of Burkina Faso. Military, as we know, is not a popular government, so we may not even want to suggest it. But what's your take on that?
Well, if the military may have more or less the ability to command and follow up the command, unlike what we have in the democratic setting, whereby a president may give an instruction and people may feel that after all, he didn't win any election, any seat in this area. How come he will be able to? Well, it's supposed not to be anyway. But with military, the military may be able to really galvanize the support that he needs within the military and also beyond the military to be able to enforce whatever he wants to do. It's just that the military in many places have also been bastardized. They have been politicized in such a way that when they get there, they also have this mentality of politicians to the extent, to the effect that some of them feel it's now time for them to sit tight and then continue to eliminate many people who they ought not to eliminate. It's due to these many transgressions that are perpetrated by military that make people not to really want them. But in this kind of situation, it's getting worse.
Well, we seem not to be having that in Burkina Faso. I mean, Traore, that's the head of the military junta in Burkina Faso. It's so popular in Burkina Faso. Yeah,
you mean?
Well, what I'm saying is that if we're saying that military, the kind of military we have now are guys that are interested in politics and all that, I'm saying that we seem not to be having that in Burkina Faso. I mean, Traore, the guy that came in as the head of the military junta, seems to be popular there.
In Burkina Faso?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, he's a popular person because more or less he's doing what people expect the leader to do.
Yeah.
And that will always be the situation, particularly when the political class has been found wanting in many places. Because wherever you have leaders, the issue of authority flows from the extent of affection, the extent of justice that you pass to your people. If you are upright and they see you matching your words with your action, automatically you will not even need to shout at the top of your voice for them to follow your instruction. It will be a natural corollary.
Okay. All right, so we'll take another pause now, and when we return, we'll just commence our descent on this program today, Africa Discourse on Independent Television. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. Still on the program, Africa Discourse on Independent Television. All right, so Prof, so as we take our last lap on the show today, let us look at ways of really trying to see that conflicts in African nations can really, maybe be brought to the barest minimum. I mean, a situation whereby having conflicts for 3 decades and all that, so that it won't be. So what can we do as Africans and perhaps African leaders? So what should they do?
Well, African leaders should start looking backwards to know the to think about the type of people they want to leave behind. Because from what we have seen in DRC Rwanda, so to speak, conflicts today. Majority of people that are involved are these youth. And even the foreigners that are more or less involved in the crisis, who we can also say may be fueling the crisis either directly or indirectly. They are using African children as minors. These are the children that ought to be in schools. These are the children that ought to be thinking of what to do to better their future. So more or less, they are being subjected to certain hazards right from the beginning of their lives, which may eventually snowball to having some ailments that may eventually truncate their aspirations in future. Equally, the youth that are supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow, to a large extent, they are being exposed to criminality, they are being exposed to series of abuses, a war front, which of course we may eventually deplete the number of quality lives that we have to succeed the leaders in future. All these our leaders need to think seriously, to think about seriously, and find a way to limit the extent of a military engagement that they have with one another. And wherever we have such crises, even within a country, all these have to be addressed, and we have to look inwards to look at the collective future of every nation, so that collectively the nation or the continent will be better for it.
Okay. All right. So some of the facts file, statement that we have on the crisis of the DRC is that the origin of the current fighting can be partly traced back to the genocide in Rwanda in 1994. We have established that even in the course of our discussion, because we see that the crisis has spanned for more than 3 decades. That's for more than 30 years. And also, too, we read that about 800,000 people, the vast majority from the Tutsi community, have been slaughtered by ethnic Hutu extremists so far in the crisis in the DRC. So it's very, very touching that 800 people have been slaughtered, have been killed so far. Not to talk of the humanitarian aspect of it. As we speak now, we understand that a lot of Congolese are without shelter, without food,
without water, without means of livelihood,
Medicare. So that's the humanitarian part of it. Now, little wonder if at the end of the day, if Felix Nseketsi, if he's not going to be charged for criminal offenses. I mean, for the fact that to some people, he has really not been able to handle the crisis in the DRC, Prof.
Well, that will be left to more experts on this issue. But to some of us who are laymen, so to speak, one will not just open his eyes and allow his country to be invaded by another country, particularly a neighboring country that ought to be a broader nation in terms of crisis.
Been affected. I mean, don't you think he should have a way of protecting his citizens? I mean, the president, Felix Nseketsi.
Well, if more or less his own citizens are like they are leaving the place in drones now. I mean, many people are leaving. They are leaving DRC into neighboring countries, particularly from the eastern part of DRC, which shares border with Rwanda.
Rwanda, yeah.
To a large extent, many people, I mean, the M23 are the ones pursuing them out of these areas. And in its own response, it may also have found ways with the assistance of China to be able to wage war against, to repel the advancement of this M23. And where two elephants are fighting,
the grass will suffer.
The grass will suffer.
Yeah.
And to some extent, people have even said that even when grasses are not fighting, any grass, I mean, where elephants are not fighting, any grass that an elephant matches, and they will such plants come up again. Okay. So it is a difficult thing for the president of DRC.
All right, so we want to say a very big thank you, Professor Adesina, Buyinami Adesina, for finding time to come on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
And this is where we draw the curtain on the show today, Africa Discourse, looking at the ongoing crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. To be specific, the eastern part of it, as we speak now, has been in turmoil. Only on Saturday that we saw some leaders from South Africa and, of course, some parts of Eastern Africa gathering in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania to ensure that they bring a peace talk about the crisis in DRC. So we'll leave the topic and the discussion here this afternoon until same time and next week when we come with another edition and, of course, another topic on the program, Africa Discourse. My name is Evan Sunukogi. Very good afternoon to you.